I'm Aryeh Schwartz, along with my co-host Rachel Galligan, and welcome to the Winsidr show, where it's all about the W. This episode, we're talking everything happening in the W. If you like our show, please consider joining our Patreon community. For less than a cup of coffee a month, you can directly show support for the hard work we do covering the W. This episode, I'm glad to have Rachel back on the show, and we are going to be discussing the variety of head coaches in the WNBA, openings and recent closings, I guess, and a little bit of talk about a GM opening over in LA. Rachel, how you been?
I am so good. How's everybody else out there? How are you, Aryeh?
I'm good. About to make my way to the cold tundra of Minnesota tomorrow for a little
I
family time.
I am in Florida. I made the trek over on a red eye yesterday, and if anyone hears anyone yelling, that would be my family fighting over cards in the room next door. So I'll apologize in advance. I gotta love going home for the holidays.
What is the family card game of choice, Rachel?
They play Shanghai, and I don't know if there's any Shanghai lovers out there, but I'm not necessarily a huge card lover. But every now and then I'll get in the mix. But tonight I'm sitting this one out. I got some basketball I got to talk.
There we go. So we haven't had you on the show for a few episodes, so I want to hear your thoughts on the Indiana Fever's hire.
I think it's a fantastic hire. I mean,
you're talking about coach or GM there.
Hey, touche. I think both of them. I think Marianne Stanley is an icon. She's a legend and very much a pioneer in women's basketball. She deserves this opportunity. I feel, for everything she's given to this game, and I think she brings a ton of knowledge and experience to the Fever. I think the Fever organization, Tamika Catchings in general, did a really thorough job through this search. I have to believe that it was pretty well sought after, this position, and probably some really high caliber names, but I think that this is a great opportunity for Marianne Stanley, and she's exactly what this franchise needs. I think it's going to be important for her to hire a really good staff, of just people, and just being blunt, being able to connect with the players, in a certain way. And you've always, as a head coach, you've got to be able to bring people in that can combat, the things you do well, but also the things that that aren't your strengths. And at this point in her career, she knows all of those things. And so I'm excited for the Fever. There's always a special place in my heart when I lived in Indiana for all those years when I was coaching. And so I got to go to a lot of their games. I was there when they won the championship. And so that's kind of a franchise that for me, I really, I take a lot of pride in the Fever, and I think they do a great job there. I really respect the work that they've done over the years, and I'm excited for what the future brings, and I think she's going to be a great fit.
All right, well, we'll see. We'll see if you're right. But let's talk about the most recent hire in the W. Chicago announced today of our recording, Tuesday the 17th. Chicago announced the hire of assistant coach Olaf Lang. No, I have to make the joke. No, he's not from Frozen. But let's talk about what we do know about the man. He was a consultant for the Mercury in 2017. That was the year that they lost to the Sparks in the semifinals. And he was a consultant for the Sparks in 2013, where they lost in the conference finals. And he was an assistant for the San Antonio Stars, who are now debunked and moved to Vegas. Also known for his time with the Opals, the Aussie national team. He's an assistant coach there with Sandy Brundello running the ship there. And he's a former head coach at UMMC, and he was a former head coach of the Russian national team. Now, UMMC is an interesting one because, as we all know, head coach James Wade also works there as an assistant coach. So extremely interesting to hear that hire. Rachel, what are your initial thoughts?
I think this is a slam dunk home run hire. I love everything about this. I think, as a head coach, you have to be able to pull from your circle. You're going to pull from people that that you trust, that you have a history with, you have experience with, and these two have worked together. They've crossed paths together for many, many years. Obviously, there's no surprise with James Wade and his experience overseas, and the way he is coaching, some of his current players, with the Sky over there. It's a different style. It's a different world, than what people just here in the States who just watch the WNBA see. And Lang is in that world as well. So I think this is a good match. I think these are two guys that have historically worked well together. He probably, has a great deal of experience coaching many of this roster already. And honestly, I think I'm a little bit surprised that they were able to pull it off, to be completely honest. It's not like a WNBA assistant position pays a ton of money, especially at the Chicago Sky organization. Not trying to just be blunt, but it's just reality. So I'm honestly kind of impressed that James Wade got this done. I think this is a home run hire on all fronts, and it benefits Lang in his career. So, I mean, he said it, in the release about how this is such an exciting time for the Sky organization, and it is. I mean, we all know that it's trending upward. The roster is fantastic. They've played really well. I mean, I think we're probably going to be in discussions of really talking about this team the next couple of years. Is, who knows, maybe potential contenders in a couple of years. I'm not sure. That's for a different conversation, but it is an exciting time with Chicago, with Diamond Shields and, Vandersloot and everybody on that roster. So I think that, anybody who wants to be a part of that would be lucky, and Lang obviously wants to be a part of what they're doing there, and I don't blame him. So I think this is a great hire. I love everything about it. I'm excited for him.
Yeah, I gotta say, this is probably the most exciting time in Chicago Sky history, only second to the days leading up to their finals run in, I think it was
Yeah.
2015. But I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see what they do. With assistant coaches, it's always kind of delegating roles. They called James the what was it, the forward whisper, like the
Mhm.
bigs whisper or whatever. So it's an interesting thing. I normally don't give too much stock to assistant hires. I just like to more so pay attention to them, because typically those are the people who feed into the head coaching positions when there's openings. And speaking of which, let's talk about the New York head coaching job. Great segue there, Aryeh. Obviously, there's been a lot of chatter about who's been in discussion for this position. As we at Winsidr have reported, Vicki Johnson was in discussion and has formally interviewed for the position. My understanding is, as things moved along, she made a decision that she was going to be staying, or I don't know necessarily, to be honest, if it was New York saying to her saying to them. But my understanding through speaking to multiple sources on variety of ends, that she will be back in a Las Vegas Aces polo this coming season. And I think that's exciting time for Vegas. I mean, Vegas is also one of those teams that you have to be really excited in the same way if you're the Chicago Sky. Maybe even like have that frustration that we gotta, in the words of the Washington Mystics, run it back, because I feel like they left some stuff on the court. So it's going to be exciting to see what they can do with that roster. And also, as far as my understanding through speaking to people in the know, they are expecting Liz Cambage back, which I'm sure if you've heard her speak about her experience in Las
Right.
Vegas, that's not a surprise at all. But let's talk about kind of the three other big names that are included in this New York Liberty opening. Let's start off with the obviously person who's been in the W least recently, Steve Smith. Talk to me about your thoughts about Steve, Rachel.
I like Steve. He's such a great guy. He has a ton of experience. Most recently was with Connecticut, and Kurt Miller really raves about him, and his experience. And I think this would be an incredible opportunity for him. if I had to rank, kind of in my mind, and I'm not going to drop any Rachel bombs today. Trust me, I would if I could, but he's got to be in that top two, in terms of the finalists. If I had to guess, I just think what he's been able to accomplish in his career, and he's most recently been out in California, but I I think he's a phenomenal guy, and I think he knows his stuff. The players love him. He connects well with them. I just don't know if that's necessarily going to be the fit for New York at this given time. So I don't know. I mean, what are your thoughts? Let me throw it back to you.
Well, I was going to wait until we talked about all three of them, but I will say personally, like my personal take, not that like I'm saying, oh, I've spoken to somebody and I believe like this is the direction the team's going in. Um, I look at it as Steve is in my opinion, the obvious choice. He's been a head coach a few times. He has more experience than Walt Hopkins and Eric Tebow have combined as coaches. um,
Yeah,
he was with the Sun in their modern era transformation from a perennial 6 seed team to a top 4 team or a top 3 team,
yeah,
honestly.
and was pivotal in kind of that
Oh,
transformation. He was
definitely,
really
definitely. And so what that says to me is he's kind of the best of both worlds because I think in the current situation or the current field that we're in the W, we have this new wave and this old wave. And some older coaches, I don't want to call him an old coach, but like some older coaches have the ability, like you either have the skill on your roster to play any style, or you kind of have to start doing the new style, the modern era of basketball. And I think what we saw from Steve in his time in Connecticut is that he has the experience as an older coach, but he also has the ability to inject that new wave, that new style of ball into his coaching style. And to me, that's just a perfect storm. And if I'm New York, I'm going to want to go with someone who's proven themselves as a head coach, who's proven themselves, throughout their career versus, a flashy young name. Now, that being said, I completely understand the want, the urge, and the need for a young, flashy injection
sure.
of like a big name. And I think kind of leads to what I assume we both believe is the number 2 person, if not the number 1 person in this discussion, Eric Tebow.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do think that that will be the biggest difference in this, what being able to connect with that Liberty roster, this next generation of players. I think that that plays a huge role in this. Now, that is a risk because, again, if it's not going to be Steve Smith, we're talking about Eric Tebow and Walt Hopkins, both two phenomenal, assistant coaches. Eric Tebow, probably one of the biggest names in the WNBA right now.
Oh, has to be. I mean, his name's getting
thrown around every single
yeah.
job.
Oh, yeah.
That's just a matter of time. And I just think with what's happening right now in New York in the Liberty, and I was actually just thinking about this the other day. I mean, has there been a more exciting time for a franchise? The hype that is going on right now with the Liberty, and the pieces they have in place, but not just that, but in first round draft pick, and then the move to the Barclays Center. I mean, this is like the place to be right now in my mind. I mean, yeah, you could say the same thing for Vegas and whatever, but I'm looking at New York as one of the the original franchises in this league that has the potential with the right coach to really make a huge comeback. I mean, honestly, it can't really get any worse. There I said it. But this has a chance to really, take off with what they've been able to invest in the decisions they've made with this franchise within the last 6 months. So the right coach and the right new look is going to be so key. And if I was a betting woman, I think it's going to be Tebow. But that's just my guess. I swear I know nothing. But I think that's a great fit, and that would be a great opportunity for him, and he would really thrive with that roster.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I mean, I think it's not to crap on you, but like I just feel like that Eric's kind of the obvious choice just because his name is getting floated around with any position. Heck, you have a coach in this league of a team that maybe didn't do so well, and his name might be thrown in there as like, oh, we're gonna drop them and bring them in. Like he is just like the hot commodity right now. In the same way, I think that James Wade kind of was last season. So props to him. There's obviously some people are going to doubt him, as I'm sure he's faced his whole life. kind of that chip on your shoulder of you're the son, what you got this job because of blah blah blah, and you have to prove yourself and that and that. But I will say, everybody who knows basketball and everybody who has seen what Eric can do, and Eric around the players, knows that he's a good coach.
Yep.
So you got to give him his props. Now, one other person we got to talk about who might be the sleeper in this, but I wouldn't be shocked by any of these people getting the position. But Walt Hopkins, he's a guard-focused, offensive, analytically driven person. I've had the pleasure of spending time with Walt, and he's a really nice, personable guy, really funny, really goofy. But he's a very serious person. Everyone likes to talk about how he went to Harvard and this and that, but he definitely is a numbers-driven person. I kind of, this is a stretch. I was going to make like a NBA coaching comparison, but I'm not even going to, because I don't actually know the coach's name, but whoever the Boston Celtics coach is, and he talks about learning from
Brad.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah, Rachel knows more about the NBA than me. Surprise there. But no, he talks about often, inserting things from Euroball and that things that he's seen from the W and a variety of anywhere that basketball is being played. He'll say that he's willing to open his eyes and try and learn things and kind of infuse that into what he does. And I kind of see a similar style in Walt Hopkins, if you're asking me.
No, I think so too. And I mean, look what he's been able to do, with the Lynx organization and all the experience he's gained, with Cheryl Reeve. I mean, like you said, I'm not going to repeat everything you just said because you were phenomenal with it, but I wouldn't be surprised, because I think this is a phenomenal list of names. And I'm including Vicki Johnson. That Vicki Johnson would be a phenomenal hire for this organization. So the fact that all four of these names have come to light, like we shouldn't really be surprised by any of them. And I think it's really speaking to, this organization is really swinging for the fence with this, and they're going to bring in the person that they feel like, part of me feels like they're going to go with the hot name, because all of the news and the hype and everything they're doing right now, and this new generation and this new look and this new everything that the Liberty are going to be about. That's just, all these announcements, that's just the vibe I get. But regardless, I think that there's, every single coach on this list would do a phenomenal job. And honestly, I'm hoping we find out sooner rather than later, because I feel like it's taken quite a while.
Yeah. And that's something that, it's honestly a perfect segue to our next topic, which is the GM position. But the reason I say it's a perfect segue, because something that came up, if you don't listen to, you should listen to. Cheryl Reeve has a podcast. If you want to hear her let loose, you should definitely listen to it. On that podcast, she brought something up that really blew my mind, that I never thought about it in this way before. She talked about how teams often don't want, a lot of fans complain, a lot of people who watch the W are complaining, oh, this team hasn't hired their new head coach, and it's, it's been months and blah, blah, and the season's so close and this and that. The reason they wait, or one of the reasons that they wait, is because until January 1, you're still on that contract. You're still getting paid a salary. So if you hire someone before that, even if it's a month or 2 months or 2 weeks, you're paying double salary for a period of time. And as we know, WNBA teams are stingy as hell. So
good point.
Yeah, no, great stuff. But as we were talking about LA, I agree with you. I expect New York to announce it any time now. I wouldn't be shocked if it comes out before this episode comes out. I wouldn't be shocked if it comes out right after New Year's. Speaking of, I similarly expect LA's GM announcement, which has gone extremely under the radar, to also be announced around that time, probably early January. And for me, obviously we got to say Michael Fisher has to be in there. There's been rumblings that he carried a huge workload during Penny's time there, and is a huge reason of the success that they've had as far as building rosters. So I think anybody who's counting him out and not thinking about him as a possibility is just out of their mind wacko. Besides that, we both have been in communications with a variety of people who are in the know. We're not going to leak any names today, because we do want to kind of further our investigation so we can give you a complete idea of what exactly is going on, because that's how we do it. But I do want to say that there are some names that we've heard floated around that might shock you, that have been around the W in a plethora of roles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, first off, I think it's a little interesting. No one's really talking about this
At all.
I haven't heard anybody talking about this GM role. I might just have to throw out a tweet just to get some conversation going and see what people are saying. But no, I mean, you're exactly right about Michael Fisher. He's one of the most, I know him personally. He's a phenomenal guy, and he works tirelessly, and he has so much experience in the WNBA. I mean, it dates back to the Houston Comets days. And he's really been groomed for that GM position. It's just, in my opinion, a matter of time until he gets it. The question is, is he too linked to Penny Toller, or do they feel like they need to bring in, some new blood, if you will? To me, that's the biggest question on that front with Michael Fisher. And some of the other names, like you said, they've been in the league. I think some would surprise you, some as players, some as coaches. But we need to, let me do my investigating a little bit further before we start dropping some of that stuff. But I'm very curious as to which direction they're going to go with this. And I think it's been real quiet. It's been quiet from the whole front in terms of the leadership with LA Sparks. And, those are some big shoes to fill. Say what you want about Penny Toller and the way things ended, but she did a phenomenal job with that organization, as a really strong woman for so many years, and the decisions she made and the championship, that especially their most recent one, so she really was so pivotal in what the Sparks have been for so many years. So that's a big shoe to fill. Sometimes.
Oh, I mean, I feel like, no, I was just gonna say, I feel like, I'm gonna throw this out there. Penny Toller is the best WNBA GM we have seen. If someone disagrees with me, if someone thinks, someone else should be in that discussion, at me, let me know. And I'm not saying that in let's fight about it. I'm legitimately struggling to think of anybody else who's on that level with her.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. Absolutely fair. So that change, this is a very serious time for the LA Sparks. And this is a franchise that I've often referred to as kind of the pinnacle in the WNBA. It being in LA and the hype and the attention that they've drawn for so many years. I mean, this is kind of where people want to go. This is where people want to be. It's LA. It's the LA Sparks. And it's one of the most recognizable franchises in the league. So this is a big deal, and it's about time we get this conversation going a little bit.
Yeah, definitely, and we will direct that conversation as needed. One final point that I feel like we need to bring up, we're not going to discuss it. It's just a bullet point, end of discussion. The Fever need to hire a PR person. It's great you have a head coach. It's great you have a GM. But as you know, if anybody watched the press conference of the announcing of the head coach and the new GM, there was not a lot of media there. And I'm not counting that towards, the W can't get media, or, Indiana, blah, blah. No. I'm counting that to the fact of how are media going to be informed about the decisions and the moves and the press conferences and things like that, and give proper attention to this team if you don't have a PR person, if you don't know who you're supposed to contact to get in interviews, if you don't know who you're supposed to contact to discuss, article ideas or anything, it's a huge issue. I'm not saying that PR is, the number one on the list when you have an opening in GM and an opening in head coach, but I would argue that it's pretty much similar to the level of importance as those two positions.
I agree with you. That's a fantastic take, and Kevin did a phenomenal job, and hopefully, getting someone in there sooner rather than later. And, this is a point that we don't talk about as much. We spend, obviously we talk about the teams, the players, the coaches, but PR positions are so pivotal when it comes to media, and your average everyday fan doesn't necessarily deal with that, but you and I and our colleagues that we're working with consistently, we do. And teams in particular, a great PR guy or woman, is really driving that media force, and they can really take that team to the next level, especially when it comes to things like a new hiring of a head coach. So I'm with you on that point of kind of how everything happened with Marianne Stanley and just the way that went down. It was a little bit disappointing.
Yeah, no, definitely. But all right, that's all we got for this episode. Happy holidays to all. and to all a good year, as they say.
Merry Christmas, everybody. Happy holidays, whatever's politically correct. I hope you guys have a phenomenal time with your families. Eat a lot of food. We will talk with you soon.
Yeah, and happy Hanukkah to the Jews out there.
There you go.
There we go. We believe the players of the W and its community deserve the same in-depth analysis and respect that men's sports receive on a daily basis. With that in mind, please consider joining our Patreon community to help support us and the hard work that we do.